Hi guys, good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are. My name is Adamu Joyce, and today I will be teaching you how I make my ponchos. Now this video, or rather this tutorial, it's for one reason, because I've had so many people ask me online how I make my ponchos, and because I've had to tell them you have to come down to the store so I can share the tips and tricks I use in making my poncho. So today I decided I'm going to come on here and show you guys the 3 key things you need to look out for when you want to make a poncho. Now I realize there's so many crocheters out there. I've had to make their ponchos differently. Now that doesn't mean they're wrong. No, I'm just working with what works for me. So whatever works for you is what you should stick to. But because I've had a lot of people ask me for this tutorial, that is why I've decided to share it today. So I would want you to get your materials ready, and then we can kick off. So first things first, what you need is your yarn. This kind of poncho consumes a lot of yarn depending on body size. Now the least amount of yarn it will consume, let's say for a size small, should be around 6 to 7 balls of ye extra. Now for those of you that are not in Nigeria, you will need about at least 1,600 yards of yarn to be able to start and finish this poncho. So I use a 6.0 mm for my ponchos. Now the reason being that this poncho can consume a lot of time when you're making it, so trying to beat up time and then trying to maximize my yarn, I decided to work with 2.0 mm. So all of the ponchos you have seen on my page are all worked with 2.0 mm hook. Now the second thing you need is your tape roll. You need your tape roll, you need your scissors, you need your yarn, and then you need your stitch markers, and finally you also need your tapestry needle so as to hide in your ends at the end of your project. So after this being said, I think we should just dive into the tutorial proper. Okay guys, so the first thing first you should take note of is the measurements. Poncho comes in different sizes, just like we all come in different sizes. We have a size small, medium, large, extra large, 2XL, and so on and so forth. Now what a size small would wear, a size 2 extra large cannot wear. So that's where the trick and tips comes from. So now to be able to get the perfect body size for when making a poncho, you should have to take the shoulder measurement. I know I posted this kind of video earlier last year or 2 years ago, but this is an upgraded version of it. So now you take the shoulder to shoulder measurements. You can see for our model here, her shoulder to shoulder is 15 inches. When we multiply it by 2, it gives us 30 inches, right? Because this is supposed to go around this way, but as creatives we don't measure like this, we measure like this. So you go this way and then you multiply it by 2, and that gives you the exact measurement for shoulder to shoulder. So hers is giving us 30, but because yarn can stretch up to 4 inches, we tend not to use the exact measurement we have just found out now. So what do we do in situations like this? Okay, since we know that yarn expands, okay, and we're not supposed to use the measurement, what are we supposed to do? Now we're supposed to subtract out of the 30 that we've gotten. As I earlier said, yarn can expand up to 4 to 5 inches. So in this case, instead of working with the 30 inches, we have to subtract 4 inches out of the 5. I mean, out of the 30 inches, we subtract 4 inches out of the 30, and when we do that, we'll arrive at 26. Okay, so when we arrive at 26, we're going to chain up 26 inches long. 26 inches long. That's the first thing we have to take note of. Now the second thing we need to take note of is the measurement, the length measurement of our poncho. I've done a survey earlier last year, and then I found out that most ladies or women are almost of the same length from shoulder to wrist. Now from shoulder to wrist, she doesn't have hands, sorry about that, but from shoulder to wrist we found out that it's usually 25 inches. Some would be 24, some would be 24.5, but most women are actually 25 inches. So now we do not subtract from the length measurement. We only do that for the shoulder to shoulder. So you take note of the measurements. This is how you measure. You place your tape rule on the shoulder and down to the wrist, and then you take the length measurement. Now after that's been said, we can now proceed into the tutorial proper. Okay guys, so we're ready to start. Remember, you're working with a 6.0 mm hook, right? So let's begin. As we had earlier said, our model is shoulder to shoulder measurement is 30 inches, but then we said we have to subtract 4 inches out of it, otherwise by the time we are done making the poncho, is going to expand further than necessary. So in this case, we're going to chain up 26 inches, right? Now by the end of your 26 inches, your chain should be even number. If at the end of your 26 inches worth of chain is an odd number, you either have to reduce 1 or add up 1, but in every case it has to be even number, thereby it has to be divisible by 2, right? So I'm not going to chain up 26 inches since this is a tutorial. I'm just going to chain up enough to be able to show you the trick and tips I want to show you on this video. So let's count my chain. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 31. So mine is an odd number. In this case, I would either decide to add 1, or I would lose this one that makes it the 31st stitch, or rather chain. So if at any point this video is too fast for you, please remember that you can actually pause the video and watch it over and over again until you're able to make this poncho. Good. So now I took out 1 instead of adding up 1, so I have 30 chains. Now I have 30 chains. If I divide 30 by 2, it gives me 15 chains. Now this poncho is being increased in 2 different places, which is the front and the back, and that's the front that goes downwards towards your knee. So that is why our chains have to be even number. So if I'm going to divide this chain into 2, it will mean that this side will take 15 and this side will take 15, right? And if I'm supposed to start my increase on the first stitch of the first 15 chains, this would be the first stitch of the first 15. And then if I'm supposed to start the next increase on the first stitch of the second part of the 15 chains, it will be on my 16th chain, not my 15th chain. Okay, my 16th chain would be the first chain of the second part of my 15 chains. Now I know it's confusing, but I would still explain further so you understand. Meanwhile, you will need your stitch markers at this point. Okay, so let me get mine. Good. Now to be able to continue, you are going to trace your chain and make sure it is not twisted at any point, and then slip stitch to join, just this way. Good. Now I have a circle and it is not twisted in any form. If it's twisted, then you have to unstitch it, or rather I don't know, you just have to lose the slip stitch and redo it, but make sure it is not twisted at any point. Okay, just like this. Good. Now there's something I like to do for my ponchos before starting the pattern proper. But before I teach you how to do that, I would want you to count your 15 chains and mark it. So if we count from the slip stitch, this would be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15. Now this is 15 on this side and this will be 15 on this side, and if we're meant to have 2 increases on 2 different points, which is here and here, that would mean that we cannot work our second part of increase in our 15th stitch. Okay, if we do that, here is going to have 16 stitches and here would have 14 stitches, which would mean that it is not equal. So to have equal sides, you have to mark your 16 chain and stitch, which is the first stitch of your second part of your poncho. So this is 2 4 6 8 10 12 14 15 16. So you mark this one and leave it there, because when you get to this point, this particular stitch you just marked would be the next stitch you're going to work your increase in. So with that being said, I'm sure you must have marked your first stitch of your next part of your poncho. So there's just this little thing I like to do for all of my ponchos before I begin the pattern proper. Okay, we understand that the granny stitch pattern is what we use mostly for ponchos here in Nigeria, or rather across the world. It just works perfectly. It's very easy to work with and very easy to understand, but I like to give it a foundation of single crochet first before starting my pattern proper. So since I'm going to be working with single crochet, I chain up 1 and then I still start my increase in my foundation. So what I would do is I'm going to single crochet into the slip stitch 1 2. Yes, I know, but remember to mark your first stitch of single crochet, because when you are done and then you come back to this point, that will be the same stitch you're going to slip stitch into. Now because I said we're going to do our increases, remember we have to start it in the foundation. So I single crochet 2 times into the first stitch, and that is the first stitch of my first part of poncho, and then I chain 2 1 2, and then I go back into that same stitch and work another 2. This way. Okay, then I go into the remaining chains, into the remaining 14 chains, and work 1 single crochet in each chain, just 1 in each chain. Okay, so I'm going to allow you work your 1 single crochet in each of the next chain until you get to your marked stitch. Then I'll come back and show you what to do. Okay, so I'm back to the marked stitch. So at this point I'm going to remove my stitch marker this way and then work single crochet increase into this, 2 single crochet into that same stitch, chain 1 and 2, and then go back into it and work another 2 single crochet. Okay, this is what it looks like at the moment. Then the remaining chains, take 1 single crochet each. So just like you did the other side, 1 single crochet in each chain, you're going to work 1 single crochet in the remaining chains until you get back to your next mark stitch. So continue to do this. I'll meet you up at the so I am now at the end of my poncho. Remember the first stitch I marked? So this is what your first part of poncho should look like. Okay, at this point you should have 14 14 4 4, which would be 8 plus 28. That would be around 32, right? No, 34. Yeah, that would be 34. So at this point you should have 34. The only increase would have here and here would be 6, because usually this first chain would have just taken 1, but because we did 2 single crochet, chain 2, 2 single crochet, that means we added 3 extra stitches into the same stitch, and here we added 3 extra stitches into the same stitch. So instead of having 30, which was the same amount of chains we started with, we would have 30. Am I right? Yeah, we would have 36. I'm so sorry, I'm poor at mathematics, but I hope that you get the whole jig here. Okay, so back to our tutorial. Now this same stitch we marked at the beginning, we're going to remove the stitch marker, and then we're going to make a slip stitch into it to join our piece. So at this point, this is what our piece should look like. This end and this ends are pointed, and this ends are flat. So when you fold them into 2, you can see it's already giving you that poncho effect. Imagine if you had worked your next increase into your 15th stitch. I bet you it won't look like this. It will look something like this. One side will be longer than the other. They would not be equal. Okay, so back to our tutorial. So we made our first slip stitch. What I would do is I would make another slip stitch into the next single crochet that I made. Remember, we had to start with 2 single crochet, chain 2, 2 single crochet. Now we slip stitch into the 2 single crochet at the beginning, and we're still going to go back into the chain 2 space and make another slip stitch. So you have worked 3 slip stitches and 3 slip stitches at this point, right? Good. So now to start the pattern proper, the granny stitch pattern proper, I usually would love to start in the middle, in the chain and space middle of every of my round, so that you don't it's just a way I used to hide my secret. Okay, so starting this pattern, granny stitch, I'm going to chain up 3, which counts as my first double crochet. Okay, and remember, at every point we have to do our increase in this point and this point, but the remaining stitches after this takes 1 1 each. Okay, so if this counts as 1 double crochet and we're using the granny stitch pattern that has to do with multiples of 3 double crochet, our increase pattern in this point will no longer be 2 chain 2 2. It will now be 3 double crochet, good, like this. Remember, I said my chain 3 counts as 1 double crochet, so this is already 3 double crochet. Now I'm going to chain up 1 and 2, and then I'm going to go back into that same space and work another set of 3 double crochet. Good. Now this is what your increase should look like at this point. Okay, so working the granny stitch pattern, we work the set of 3 in one stitch and ignore 2 stitches. You know, usually we would have just worked out 1 double crochet in each stitch, but because it is granny stitch, we decided that we're going to move all 3 stitches into 1 stitch and skip the remaining 2. So we're going to skip the first 2, 1 2, and then work our 3 stitches into the 3rd. I hope you understand though, because it's not easy making a tutorial video. Okay, so this is what it should look like at this point. Remember, you skip these two. The two you were supposed to make here, you added it to this stitch plus the one that this stitch was supposed to take. So that's how it works. Now let's continue. We're going to repeat the same thing. Skip the next 2 stitches and walk in through your third. 3 double crochet, just like so. Good. Can you see? And then you continue to do skip 1, 2 and walk into the third. 3 double crochet. Good, good, good. You're doing great so far. All right, so this is what it should look like at this point. So you're going to continue doing that until you get to this chain 2 space. When you get there, I'm going to meet you up there. Okay, great. So this is where I am now. These are my last set of granny stitch pattern. So I have 2 left. I'm going to skip these 2 and then go into my chain 2 space and work my next increase. Okay, remember, just like we did at the beginning, you know, after our 2 double crochet, our increase is here, we had to skip the first 2 stitches and work the next. So it's the same thing here as well. Okay, then chain 2 and go into the same chain 2 space and work your increase. So at this point, this is what your project should look like. Okay, your increases and then your granny stitch. Okay, so now we're going to continue. Remember, it's just like the way we started here. So we're going to skip the first 2 stitches and work our granny stitch here. And then skip the next 2. You do the same thing until you get to the end. Then I'm going to teach you how to make your slip stitches in this round. Okay, so continue. I'll meet you when you get here. Okay, good. You're doing great so far. So now we're at the end. Remember, we have to skip 2 stitches and then back to where we started. Remember the 2 stitches and the 2 single crochet we slip stitch into this, or rather, I don't know, I hope that's the proper English, but these are the 2 single crochet we slip stitched into when we started this round. So we're going to skip them. They count as stitches, but because of the way the pattern is, we have to skip them, and because we had already worked our last set of granny stitch, we're going to skip them, and then we're going to make slip stitches in 3 of these stitches and into the chain 2 space. So remember, your chain 3 counts as a stitch, so you're going to go into the top of your chain 3 and make 1 slip stitch. Good. And then your next double crochet, which is this one, this is the stitch, you're going to go into it and make another slip stitch. Good girl. And then you're going to go into the next and make another slip stitch. Good, just like this. And then the last one into the chain 2 space, make another slip stitch. Good. Now the whole idea about these slip stitches is just so you can start at the middle here. Okay, that is how I make my own poncho. Remember, I'm only showing you how I make mine, but I'm sure you would see tons of poncho tutorial online. So whatever works for you is what you should work with. Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to work the next round, and I think by that time we should be done with the first part of the poncho. Now you're going to repeat the second round until you get to your desired measurement. Okay, so you're going to chain 3. Remember, it counts as 1 double crochet, and then we're going to repeat what we did here into the chain 2 space. So add 2 more double crochet, Good, just like so, and then chain 2, 1, 2, and back into the chain space and work another 3 sets of double crochet. Good, now you're done with this first part of increase. Now remember at the beginning we said, okay, you have to skip 2 stitches and work into the third, but in this second round we don't have to work into the stitches. Can you see this holes that the first round has created for us? These are the holes we're going to go into and work our sets of granny stitches. So you go into them like this. Good, 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 good. Aha, can you see? And then you go into the next. Good, like this. Go into the next, and you continue to do this until you get to your next chain 2 space of your next increase corner. So when you get here, you repeat the increase, and then you continue to work like this. Okay, so I'll meet you when we get here. Okay, good. So I'm back to my next increase. I'm going to work my increase, 3 double crochet, like this, chain 2, remember, and then another set of 3 double crochet into the same space. Okay, and then we're going to go back in and work into this stitches, and then when you get back here, remember how we did our slip stitches here? You're going to repeat it here, slip stitch here, 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 and into the space. Okay, and then you continue to repeat round 2 of the granny stitch. Continue to repeat that until you get to your desired length. But since I'm teaching you how I make my own ponchos, what I usually do is 6. Okay, did that just happen? All right, sorry about the break. My tripod was messing up. You know how you can not really bank on things like this. All right, so back to our tutorial. So since I'm teaching you how to make my kind of poncho, what I'll usually do is, since my ponchos have curves, I would give the curves 5 inches for the length, and then I would give the body of the granny stitch poncho 5 inches, just so the equation is balanced. So 20 inches, we're going to continue working this until we have 20 inches, but I think I should show you how to measure. Now when we're measuring this poncho, we don't measure to the middle, we don't measure this way, we measure from this point. That's to the sides where you know that your hands are going to go. You don't measure the middle. This middle doesn't count at all, so you keep measuring from this point down to 20 inches. So when you get to 20 inches, I'm going to come back and show you how to work your curves. I hope this helps. Bye bye for now.